Do you find yourself intrigued more by certain types of phenomena than others? Like, are you more attracted to ghost stories versus abduction stories or UFO sightings?
Well, I think the subject that really gets me the most is that of the afterlife. Because, as I often say on my shows, it's one of those things where we're not all going to see Bigfoot. We're not all going to see a ghost, and many of us won't see a UFO in the course of our lifetimes. But we're all going to die. And I think, maybe not the UFO question, but I think that the answer to the afterlife is partially the key to the answer of much of it. Certainly things like ghosts, or at least part of the answer. So to me, the biggest question is what happens after we die? And it is an entirely selfish question. It's a question that's selfish because, heck, I want to know, if I tried to do a pretty good deal in this life and be pretty decent to people and try to do the right thing, not perfect, am I going to have a nice existence? Or like some people say, hey, if I don't follow this dogma, every jot and tittle of this particular dogma, I'm going to burn in hell for eternity. I'd like to know that. Or if it's just a big black void. I don't think it's a big black void. I mean, I look at probably the experience that I'm almost most interested in is the near-death experience. And we've had great guests on talking about that. And I think his name is, I'll have to look him up. We had a gentleman on a few months ago who had a book called After. And it was just fantastic. And his first name's Bruce, but I can't remember the last name right now. I'll figure it out. But that was, again, somebody that didn't have a strong belief in the paranormal, but through his practice as a doctor, I believe he's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, he came to believe that the afterlife is a real thing. And these NDEs where people not only explain, the white light and the feeling of love and all these things. I mean, a lot of that could be explained away as kind of like chemicals in the brain, but where they can report things that happened around them. They're flatlining and they can explain in detail what the medical staff is doing to them, and they're overhead. How do you explain that away? Because I know that the skeptics say, oh, it's the throes of a dying brain and a tunnel of light and the euphoria and all this stuff. That's what the, astronauts experience when they ride the vomit comet. And I mean, yeah, there could be some truth to that. But again, I go back to how do you explain the ability of someone who's, in some cases, who is in the middle of an NDE, being able to come back explaining things that were, not the point of view from their body, but above, and things that they couldn't have possibly seen through any conventional means. How do you explain that? When you explain that to me, I can say, okay, I buy your, throes of a dying brain argument. But you got to explain that to me first. So I believe in an afterlife. I think it's the ultimate question. The other questions, the question of aliens, that's fascinating to me. And I think, as we said, before we started rolling even, I think that's a question that just may explode here any time now. And I think it's very likely that they're aliens. But even more importantly, what happens when I die? That's the most important question. Again, from a purely selfish standpoint. But I guess in a way that's good, because that ties back to what I said about In Search Of when I was a little kid. People think, this is my full-time job now. And people say, oh, he does this because, he makes a living at it, he makes money at it, blah, blah, blah. Yes, is the way that I make a living. But it started, and it has continued with a thread of a very selfish interest. And I'm very interested in this material. And even though I've probably done over 2,500 episodes of my various shows, plus and free, I'm still interested. And that's kind of cool.